Good morning, everybody. I know it's been a few weeks since I've done a live. Well, we had holidays and, of course, Happy New Year. So I'm going to bring on Todd Fossey from Integrated Defense Strategies. I've had him actually on the Fight House Talks podcast a couple of times, but since that podcast is kind of kaput, I'm going to have him on here anyway. So we're going to get into some Clucker today. Todd's always got something great to talk about. So let's just do this because this is going to be a lot of fun. Anyways, let's go. Todd, what's going on, brother?
Dude, Kurt, good to be here, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. So, catching up with you, you're a busy man. What you been up to here lately?
Man, just gearing up to do our thing. We've got a pretty packed 2025 for IDS training.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff going on. Our second annual conference, IDS Fight IQ for CCW conference, happening in September, and working on the lineup is going to be spectacular.
Yeah, I was looking at your list. It's like, yeah, let's do this.
That was 2024.
Yeah,
and so now I'm working on 2025 right now, but the people that we have locked in is really exciting. So.
Yeah, I need to make it down there. It's just, again, there's so much travel and time. And also I'm going to the Philippines this year, so I have to be picking choosies, but it's on my list.
Of course,
it's
man.
going to happen, brother.
Of course. It's an open invite for you.
Warren, I appreciate you.
Always, brother.
So with that busyness, since this is the first time you've been on my show here on the Fight House Talks, no, not the Fight House Talks, correction, on 2 FMA-Nerds talking about stuff. Oh man, that's going to get edited. But point being, this first time on 2 FMA-Nerds talking about stuff. This is a Filipino martial arts show, well, sort of. But since it's the first time being on here, can you give me a little bit of actually tell as long of a biographical as you want, because we got time to
Man, I don't know. I'm stuck at talking about myself. I'll do the best that I can. I'll start by saying this. I don't have any FMA training at all. Like none. I taught at a conference once, and I kind of had to do, I was at the conference, I kind of had to do a little block participated in a little block, and I'm not against FMA at all. I don't want people to think that. I'm not against it. I just have never done any of it. My mentor is Greg Nelson, and of course, Greg is super high up in FMA and we talk a lot about it.
Yeah. And
I've been on, I think this is like my 6th podcast that is an FMA podcast.
Yeah.
even though I don't do it at all. But I do. I have a lot of respect for it when it is spoken of in a way that is intellectually honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start by saying that I have one goal and one objective only, and that is the preservation of life.
Yes.
I'm not interested in political correctness. I'm not interested in being popular. I'm not interested in big following. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm grateful when people follow me, but it's a small group who are really interested in the pursuit of truth.
Yeah.
So there's that. Man, I'm the founder and chief instructor of Integrative Defense Strategies out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have something here locally called IDS LabWorks, where we have classes all throughout the week, but it's different. It's different in many ways, but mostly it's different in the fact that all of our students are lab rats. What we do is research and development.
Okay.
And it's all in exploration, research, and development. And then I also teach at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. I do something called Firearms Fridays there. Where I get a chance to teach my mentor, Greg Nelson, which is a total mind fuck, right? But it's pretty cool because the highest level people are the most teachable.
Yep.
And so we take the things that I collaborate with Coach Nelson there and things I do at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, and we turn it into curriculum for our affiliate program.
Okay. And what is that affiliate program?
We have about 55. I'll tell you all about it. We have about 55 affiliates worldwide on 4 continents. We're all across the United States, and now more and more popular in Canada. We're in South America. We're in Lima, Peru. We're in Germany, Rostock, Germany. We're in the Philippines. We have a new affiliate in Trinidad, Tobago.
Okay.
And I forgot. I think that's all of the continents, and soon we're going to be in other parts of Asia. There's a lot of interest in Asia with what we do. We integrate the firearm with multiple modalities. So let's see. I get so close to this sometimes. I've been creating this process for about 15 years. I get so close to it. It's kind of like you can't see your own eyeballs. So we integrate the firearm with the legalities, the decision-making of legalities with skill acquisition, psychology, tactics, combatives, use of force, and decision-making. So I don't know if the audience can see our Venn diagram here. And you see where our logo is.
Yep.
Everything is integrated together, all as one interdependent system. So I have a background in psychology. I've had a private practice for 15 years. I lectured at medical schools for 15 years. About 20% of my practice, I worked with elite performers and world-class athletes, Olympians, major league athletes, and still do some a little bit to this day on the side a little for people who approach me and who I want to work with. And I've incorporated all of that into what I do here at IDS. I'm a certified force science analyst. I'm a total geek when it comes to force sciences. I'm a total geek when it comes to the data that surrounds violent crime, and the use of force. And so I do the best I can to take the most scientific and objective approach possible and find a nice balance between the art and the science. And it's not bro science, it's real science, right? Unlike the rest of the industry, I don't make shit up or twist it or cherry pick it to fit my fucking agenda. I know what the latest research is. That's what I do, the real thing.
And that's a really interesting point, because bro science being colloquial, it's an oral tradition, whatever you want to call it, but a big issue that and this is going to be a point within the podcast I want to get into today, is that this issue about pedagogy, and people throw this term out as a technical sounding term, but like don't understand the definition of like the process of learning and actually the process of teaching people how to learn how to teach people else how to learn how to teach. So like that whole misunderstanding is convoluted, but the fact is you have to learn these things before you can teach them. But there is a scientific approach, as you state. And the big issue we find in the industry, whether it's martial arts, firearms, or just teaching in general, is you have a bunch of instructors who are not proper educators. So they don't understand the modalities of like, here's the accountability, here's accreditation, here is scientific uptake of skills acquisition, and this idea of forgetfulness to come back to a broader concept and that integrative play. Like there's just a lot of stuff that people only rely on what has been taught to them before and are slaves to a curriculum, and lack of free expression to like discover and actually figure out that there is a real process to do this stuff. So if you want to fill in some of the holes that I had there, go for it. Man,
I'm going to let you guide me, okay? Because this is what I obsess about 24/7, 365. Skill acquisition, motor learning, human performance, force sciences, et cetera, like really, like I have my wife, I just have stacks and stacks and stacks of books and white papers and research papers, and I interview some of the top experts, and I've been mentored by some of the top experts in this area. I go to conferences, and that's because the people that I teach and I influence, their life is in my hands.
Yeah,
it's not a game.
No,
it's not a game. It's the real deal, and so I just can't do it any other way. And so we're doing the best we can at IDS to influence the instructors that we certify in the science and application for how this is done, specifically when it comes to the integrating multiple modalities with the handgun. It's not something that should be taken lightly. Here's what I see. Oh, Kurt, I'm just gonna. I
Go
see
for it. Shotgun blast it. Let's go.
I see a bunch of psychopaths who just lie
Mm-hmm.
and manipulate so that they can have narcissistic supply, and they can, have this grandiosity, and they're totally and completely and utterly delusional, and they'll say and do anything for a fan, for followings, for clicks, likes, views, or to put themselves on a pedestal. I know, brother. Like I know what I'm looking at. I when I hear the terms that are the buzzwords that they throw out, and I know what I'm looking at, and I might be the only one. Like, or very few. Like out of a million instructors. By the way, there's a difference between a presenter and a coach. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Out of a million instructors in all of martial arts and firearms training, how many let's just use the term, let's just say 1 million for now. How many have real knowledge and skill and put real time in developing knowledge and skill with skill acquisition, and are not just falling back on tradition and lore and intuition with the occasional buzzword or the occasional podcast that they listen to, or the occasional article that they read, and like, oh yeah, or something that video that they saw, I'm going to plug that in, right? But then they'll present themselves as someone who has real knowledge. There's a term for that, by the way.
Oh, okay. I for that question, I would say
fraud.
It's like 1%.
The term is fraud.
Yeah.
Okay, and the term is fraud. The term is charlatan. And in fact, the more popular, if you look up, people can look up all of this that I'm going to talk about. There's something called the halo effect in psychology, where people automatically put people up on a pedestal, and every word that they say is gospel. And a lot of it is based on popularity. And the research actually shows that the more popular somebody is in a specific discipline, the less reliable their information is.
Okay. There's some bird trails that we can go through, because there's an issue, because I mean the impetus for this conversation and many conversations we've had in the past is this dynamic about social media presenters versus actual educators. And there's some very popular people within our community, or just in general, like anybody online, and there is this constant dynamic of who's actually credible, who is a personality, why are they diving into reaction videos and clicks, likes, and views. It's the dopamine effect, rather than actually getting doctrine and information out there for people who really need it and will actually use it. So it's
an inherent and built-in conflict of interest. The algorithms are not built to promote real information. Very rarely. They're there for advertising. They're there to promote sensationalism. And if you have a true understanding of violence, you realize just how dangerous sensationalism is, and how reckless and irresponsible that sensationalism is. And good for you. You're charismatic, and you have a fake superficial charm, and you know how to hold an audience. But I promise you that when you get into real information, there's nothing sexy about it.
Nope.
It can be compelling. It can be interesting, but it's only going to be compelling and interesting to a small percentage of the population. Those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and those who are really truly interested in the pursuit of truth and understanding what really is. No one has all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but I tell you what, I've committed my life to finding them. And so I know I've called them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know who they are, and I get really disappointed when I see good people who support people like that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you're the problem. There are people out there that will say, well, I know that they're full of shit. I just enjoy watching them. Or, Todd, have you seen this? And they'll share it. And they're like, why'd you share that with me? You just helped them. The algorithm just pushed it out to 1,000 more people because you shared it with me. Like, you are the problem. You're the problem if you support those people. You
Yeah.
know, it's really it's bad.
Yeah, I see it in the different modality, but it still is relevant. Is we have celebrities that are pieces of shit, but the fact that they produce a product that we like, say like Michael Jackson, for example. Okay, Michael Jackson is, again, king of pop, phenomenal dancer, performer, but we all know collectively, it's well documented and just known is that he was a piece of shit of a human being. But the majority of people out there just will move past that, and because they love his music, they love his performance, and that seems similar to what you're describing.
We've been groomed all throughout our lives to celebrate and to put psychopaths on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens is that the general public conflates someone who's teaching someone how to save their life with celebrity. They think that they automatically gravitate to celebrity.
Yeah.
The psychopath and the malignant narcissist, they're utterly shameless. They'll behave however they need to behave for popularity or to get what they want. Mm-hmm. And there are those of us out there who just absolutely refuse to do that. Like, I refuse to do that. I am not a dancing bear.
No.
If you want to learn for real how to teach people to save their lives when they're carrying a firearm, if you want to learn for real, how to defend yourself, come and see me.
Yep.
But don't come and see me because you saw that I was I was a contributor on a popular, YouTube channel. You're not going to last more than an hour. And I really, because I'm just going to see right through you. I'm going to find a way to get you to leave. I'm going to find out if you're sincere or you're not sincere, because we're not fucking around.
No.
And so there's a process for that. Right. You can, like, I'm not going to bullshit your audience at all. I am jaded by it.
Oh yeah.
It's super disappointing to see this happen. But on the brighter note, I also think that we are in the beginning stages of a new Renaissance period.
Okay.
Where people are thirsty for the truth. The question is, will the algorithm feed them the truth? Right.
I mean, with the restrictions from censorship being removed, so to speak, by Zuckerberg's new mandate, we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a really complicated issue. Here's another aspect to it. I'll read this to you. I think I might have read this to you in the past, so bear with me. But it bears repeating. It's a cognitive bias. There's all these cognitive biases everywhere, and manipulators are great at using these cognitive biases, right? Yeah. It's called the system justification bias. I'm going to read it. Okay. Yeah, it's also, and people can look it up. It's also called the status quo bias. It says that the system justification bias is the tendency to defend and bolster the status quo. Existing social, economic, and political arrangements tend to be preferred and alternatives disparaged, sometimes even at the expense of individual and collective self-interest. So even when people know that there's a better way to do it, they won't, and that's far more effective than something that's downright dangerous. They'll still do it because of their existing socioeconomic and political arrangements. Because they just are a follower who just wants to follow the in thing to do. Listen, I've been warning about Tim Kennedy for a very long time. I'm not gonna pull any punches here. Like, I have literally used his name. Like, this guy, like, I have been warning, and like, I literally there were people that I worked with in social media in the past who would contact me and tell me to pull down my post warning about Tim Kennedy. Okay, because they were worried about how that would affect their political arrangements because they have a relationship with me, because I'm telling the fucking truth. And if the audience has done any research on the realities of Tim Kennedy lately, you'll know exactly why I said it. But a lot of people are still really eager to get on their knees and suck some dick. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they can get a little bit of shine, or they don't want, right? So this is exactly what I'm talking about. And that's just one example. I'm like, how do you not see? how do you not see this?
Well, it's the whole the term is sycophants, but it's like the little fish that hangs around a great white, because that apex predator
Yes.
cruising through, and you got everybody feeding off of that. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, man. And I get it. I know that's how just how most people are.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But don't like it. I'm not the only one, by the way. Like there are lots of people out there who are attacked and disparaged because they told the truth about Tim Kennedy or other people like him. And I know there are people probably watching right now. That's all been dispelled. Tim put out no, that's damage control. He's on video. He's on video saying it in an interview, and it's all over the internet in written interviews and on his own body, like it's everywhere, right? And so like guys like me have to compete with guys like that. Guys like I'm not the only guy like me who's out there pursuing the truth and sharing real information and who is sincere about the preservation of life and who have warned about people like that. And those are the people at the top that you have to compete with, who won't even hesitate to lie and manipulate people to follow them and their approaches to training, while the rest of us who are telling the truth are going to be like it's like everywhere that you go. What I'm going to ask the audiences to do is find the people who are authentic and who are telling you the truth and are giving you real information, and follow them.
Mm-hmm.
Unfollow the bullshitters. Unfollow them and follow the people who are giving you the real deal. And if you don't know the difference, don't follow any of them.
Yeah, it's trying to figure out the difference between an educator and an entertainer. Yeah, you can be somewhere in between, but like it seems like that it's the issue of critical thinking and critical analysis and not being caught up by the charismatic. Again, I often quote Frank Herbert in Dune, but the fact is, beware the charismatic leader is the basic lesson throughout his books. And again, you have an educator and you have an entertainer.
I am formally trained on the identification of a cult.
Yep.
I just did a podcast where I did a breakdown of all the key ingredients in the creation of a cult and cult followings.
You want to go down with that?
And some of these things might not be cults, but they are cultish and they are cult-like, right? So that's what these are. They're cults everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all around us. I have no interest. If you want to be in a cult, go. If you want to be in a cult, go somewhere else. We literally want you to think for yourself. And if you don't want to think for yourself, come and train with us. We're going to put out the information. We're going to be intellectually honest. We're going to talk about the difference between what an objective truth is and what a relative preference is. Mm-hmm. We're not going to give absolute answers to contextually dependent questions. We're going to be intellectually honest. We're going to be semantically accurate. We're going to be scientifically literate, etc., etc. Right? Like, would you want to go have brain surgery or open heart surgery, or have a liver replaced by someone who's a popular social media personality? Are you fucking out of your mind?
Nope.
Right. And so listen, my wife works in surgery every day. My wife works in brain surgery. She's like, what you guys do is so much harder than what we do. The stakes are just as high. And furthermore, I'll add this in terms of training methodology. You should know that in surgery, when the methodology is out of date by 15 to 24 months, mm-hmm. they are literally sued for malpractice and they lose their board licensing.
Yeah.
Where the methodology that's used with what we do, or I'll just say specifically in the firearms training world specifically, is 60 or 70 years old.
Yeah.
If not older. And that's how far out of date it is. And so what tends to happen is there's so much bullshit that when you put forward truth, the truth is viewed with skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so be it. We'll just keep pounding away, you know.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that popped up in definition. So going back, could you define what a psychopath is? what is the term that you said for the narcissist?
Malignant
narcissist. And the other one, of course, is the definition of a cult, because they are going to be terms are going to be brought up here in this podcast.
Well, anybody can go online and they can look up the top 10 characteristics of a psychopath. Okay. Yeah. There's psychopathy, there's sociopathy, there's a narcissistic personality disorder. There's something called a Machiavellianist. Okay, this is known as the dark triad. And it's a spectrum, so it happens on a continuum. It's not like a Venn diagram, and there's a lot of interaction between the two. But let me put it to you this way: all narcissistic personality disorders are psychopaths.
Yes,
but not all psychopaths are narcissistic personality disorders. The difference is that the psychopath needs narcissistic supply. They need a stable of admirers, or they need attention, whether that's positive attention or whether that's negative attention. Like, they literally have to have it, and they will do anything for that attention. There are some experts who would literally argue that they will die without it. They will do anything for that level of narcissistic supply. There's common characteristics and traits between all of them. The main one is between the psychopath, the sociopath, and the narcissist is that they're void of empathy. And what I mean by empathy is they can't see things or experience things from another person's point of view. They can't see from what they're seeing, and they can't feel and experience what they're going to be feeling. They only have the ability to see things from their point of view. And it's all about getting over on other people, right? And so they actually feel they have a disproportionate sense of entitlement, and they feel like if I can get over on you, and if I can fool you and trick you, then you deserve it, and I am entitled to take whatever I want from you. So if I can get away with lying to you and deceiving you, then that's on you, right? So I could go on. I go on. I have a whole list of it literally right here, and I've done episodes just on that before. But those are the main things, and they don't live in reality, right? They live in a sense of grandiose delusion. There's the overt kinds and there's the covert kinds. The overt kinds are the ones that that they walk around. They're very haughty and they're very arrogant, right? And the covert kinds are more vulnerable and right? And so that you would never guess that that's what they are. And they're the most dangerous. I can think of people in our industry right now that are specifically in your industry, that are the covert types.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you that our industry there's a disproportionate percentage of the people who fall into these they're antisocial personality disorders. And in the DSM-4, they're called the cluster Bs. There's a greatly disproportionate percentage of instructors and personalities in our industry that fall into this category.
I mean, it's the savior complex it's the highest point of where all these come from, whether it is, again, going to the definition of a cult, because most cults lead into a religious like structure and following. And the same can be said in the industry of firearms, personal protection, edged weapons, anything is dependent upon, I come to you, the expert, to save me from my ignorance and thereby teach me what I need to be taught so that I can be safe, my loved ones can be safe. And it's only you, sir, madam, that have the truth, know the way. And it's terrifyingly dangerous. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real problem. It's a real problem. And I'll say this, know thyself. And those who are listening, almost everybody has characteristics that have some of those characteristics, myself included, right? It's a matter of how pronounced are they and how many of them do you have? You know what I'm saying? Yep. And so don't go thinking that you're a narcissist just because you have some of those characteristics.
Oh, it's self-awareness versus malicious intent. So
yeah, it really does come down to the intent. And the problem with the psychopath, sociopath, and narcissist and the Machiavellianist is that they don't have self-awareness.
No,
they're incapable of self-awareness, or very little self-awareness, just enough they're all highly manipulative. The Machiavellianists, by the way, they're in the relentless pursuit of power.
Mm-hmm.
And Machiavellianists aren't necessarily psychopaths because they don't have to be out front. They don't have to be the head person or the face behind it. But oftentimes, all three of these are combined into one wonderful personality.
Yeah. break glass in case of war, but we love to celebrate as our American
if you see someone who you can tell is really enjoying being on camera and is really enjoying the attention, that should be your first red flag. I've heard things like, I talk shit about Tim Kennedy. No, I'll talk shit right to his face. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Fuck you, Tim Kennedy. Right? I wasn't even in the military. Fuck you. Right? If you, I hear, he's so nice. He stayed afterward and talked with us. And then, right? He talked with you so that he'd get narcissistic supply and so that you can say nice things about him. Like, come on. Do you have that much need to be around someone who's a celebrity? Really? You really have the need to put these people on a pedestal? Tell Tim I said it. I don't care. I'll debate Tim Kennedy 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. Same with his training methodology. You have ruined the word sheepdog response. You've ruined the term sheepdog. And a lot of people, well, what's wrong with their terminology? Listen, and here's something else that happens. Well, they're such a great instructor. My question is, how do you know?
Have you been taught anything else by anybody else?
What kind of education do you have on what it means to have great training methodology? What you mean is that you felt good. What you mean is that you had a fun experience, that they were a good presenter, that they were very articulate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because you don't know. If 3 out of 1 million instructors know what that means, you definitely don't know what that means. And furthermore, you've been conditioned by the Western education system that is all geared around super linear information processing, right? And it's not ecological in its approach at all. You have been conditioned from birth to think that that's how learning actually happens.
It's because we have part of that is because we have a patrilineal structure and this is not an issue against the patriarchy, but a patrilineal learning educational structure is men of the tribe teach the next generation, and it's followed father and son. But that's a singular data point within a small sphere of education versus the well-traveled individual who gleans information from a wide variety of experiences and mentors and came to their own discoveries. It is not just so cut and dry, but again, that's the condition.
And is willing to challenge the thesis that they've come up with. That's what we do at IDS. We're constantly challenging our own thesis in a wide variety of different ways. So it's a soft scientific approach. It has to be a soft scientific approach because violence is ultimately a qualitative experience. It can't be quantified.
Yep. Because everybody's experience, just like trauma, everybody's experience is defined from themselves, and the intensity of it is unique to them. And just in the same, nobody really knows the difference or can fully understand what it is, your trauma versus my trauma. And on top of all that, our brain knows no difference.
There's a little bit of a lag. So if I talk over top of you, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. And basically what I'm saying is the mind knows no difference because the science is out there. And I've done a lot of my own research as I've gone through my recovery, especially with the trauma-informed training, is the fact that the brain and the body knows no difference if you're in a current state of crisis, and the intensity, depending upon the distance, actually changes because you get further away from the incident, but the residuals are still there. So unless you've gone through the process of reframing and desensitization, again, the brain and the body holds the score and knows no difference, and we cannot quantify and express it to another person because the issue about language and understanding. So it is such a tricky subject for people to quantify the experiences of violence, because we can hear violence.
The variables are unpredictable and unrepeatable.
Yeah. Yep.
It's that simple. So you can't quantify it. I know that the world has tried to quantify it.
Yes.
Right. They've tried to standardize something that's not standardizable. That's your first clue. Like that's just the beginning. You qualled? Well, what is like? Hold on. Like I was on a podcast recently. I'm not going to say the name of the podcast. I would be shocked if they aired it. I'll be honest with you. And they're like, well, because I was talking about this specifically with the firearms training industry, and that's what the podcast was about.
Oh, okay.
Which is super ironic when you have people who have podcasts about firearms training who don't know anything about training and education because they're trainer. Like it's crazy, right? It's called a schema. It's outside of their mental model. It's outside. People can't see things outside of their schema. They literally can't see it. So I'm literally trying to describe what a sphere looks like to somebody who lives in a two-dimensional reality. It's maddening, right?
Yep.
Because what I do is nonlinear. There's multidimensional and multi-directional, right? And they go, well, give me an example. Like I'm like everything. It's a false narrative. It's a presupposition. I'm literally everything that you're doing is bullshit. Like, well, I'm like, name whatever you want and I'll prove it's bullshit. I literally said that. Right. And they're like, well, the 5 core principles of the I'm like, and like, do you see what you're saying? Like, you actually think those have anything to do with self-defense?
No.
Nothing. Right. And I could go on and on and on about that. But here's another example I gave. I said, let me just put it to you like this. On the most basic level of motor learning and motor skill acquisition, there are 3 categories. Literally, there is the predictable performance and learning environment. There is the semi-predictable performance and learning environment. And there is the unpredictable performance and learning environment, especially when it's a dynamic environment.
It's the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns.
Especially in a dynamic environment where the variables are literally infinite and unrepeatable, right? I'm like, they are literally what you are doing with training is completely predictable in both learning and performance. And violence is completely unpredictable. And even when you delve into semi-predictable, right, they are still literally classified as a different skill. Like, what kind of mental gymnastics do you have to do? Well, how far do you have to suspend your disbelief for you to believe that what you're doing is preparing yourself or anybody else for violence? And in fact, you're doing the opposite because you are fanning the flames of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people of low ability suffer from an illusory superiority and a metacognitive inability to recognize their own ineptitude. You literally are setting them up for a catastrophic failure in the name of self-defense. Like I literally am saying to them on the air, like, what is wrong with you? Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a responsibility to know this shit. That's like the first thing. Like, these are the first 2 things you got to know, man.
Yep. But
I haven't even gotten it. Like, my introductory lecture on this topic at IDS and our instructor certification courses, the introductory lecture is 5 hours long, just as the intro. And they're going this whole time, like they're going through the lecture. And then we don't just lecture it, we turn it into real application. Okay, so now you have the knowledge, like here's the research, everything. And I'll read some of it for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But now we're going to get our feet and we're going to apply it both as the practitioner and as the leader or the coach.
I mean, taking a pause with that. Again, concerning the Dunning-Kruger and concerning the personalities and things that come out with training and populism is my most hated word that's in the industry is the term empowerment. Because you go to a seminar, a 4-hour weekend seminar, whether it's women's self-defense or tactical cosplay, is that you go, you have fun, you get the photos, you feel great, you did a couple of skill drills that are dynamic and look cool for camera. But the question being is, what are you doing thereafter in between drilling, in between seminar sessions and photo sessions? But you went there, you're empowered, you did your palm strikes, you did your attack from the guard, you did all the stuff that's particular to the marketing, but are you putting the work in between and being faced with the hard reality of its work?
It needs to be ecologically dynamic from the beginning.
Yep.
And I'm talking about real ecological dynamics, not the guy who talks about it being ecological dynamic when it's actually not.
Mm-hmm. Did you go in the definition of what ecological dynamic is?
Yeah, I'll go through. I'll go through it. I have it here. I'll go through it, right? But there's people out there now. It's the cool thing to say.
Yeah.
And I've actually left comments like, "That's not ecological dynamics, bro."
Yep.
Okay. And then I just can't even look at it anymore. We do the best that we can to give people a good, healthy dose of reality and a healthy dose of confidence at the same time. Like, we don't want to destroy your confidence.
No.
Right? And I'm not here to say that we can't have fun. We do. We actually do have a lot of fun. A lot of people think, God, I don't want to train with that guy. He's no fun. No, we actually have a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. But I'm out here for a reason, because I want to expand the consciousness of this world, of the community. Mm-hmm. If I don't blast through your programming, you're never gonna, like, if I'm out here and I'm being Mr. Nice Guy, it's not gonna sink in. You're not gonna hear it. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to be unpopular in order for me to get through to the right people. Okay, I do this on purpose.
Yeah.
All right.
That's part of why I appreciate it.
But it's an authentic part of who I really am. I'm not performing for you. I'm just turning that part of myself up. Mm-hmm. Right. It's sort of like when Jesus, called the Pharisees and Sadducees, a den of vipers. Like, he wasn't nice. If you think Jesus was nice, read more carefully. Right. So we want to give people a good, healthy dose of reality and a healthy dose of confidence at the same time. So they have that, oh shit, I have so much I got to learn. And know that that'll always be that way if you're doing it right. You're like, you'll never feel fully prepared. And on the other hand, we want them to feel like, okay, I'm starting to learn some things, and I made some improvements immediately. And they're intentionally looking to accelerate my learning because they know that I might have to apply this stuff today.
Yep.
Right? I'm not going to give you the cool stuff in 5 years. I'm going to give you what's most functional over what is most fundamental. That's another core thing, right? Like, for us, like, why are you talking about fundamentals? That's arbitrary. What is most functional first? And I can give you analogies and all this stuff to prove that how human beings learn is first on what is most functional, right? You didn't learn to communicate by having properly structured sentences by learning the alphabet first. You didn't learn by learning how to write paragraphs and then a thesis first. You learn by communicating through what was most functional. So whenever I hear, well, you got to learn the alphabet before you can. No, you don't know about learning. Mm-hmm. You need to learn what is most functional. What's going to keep you alive first? What's the most important thing that you need to know first? Not the most important thing last.
It's hot. No. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't even that. It was just human sounds. We cried. We grunted. Right? We had facial expressions. We communicated in certain ways that weren't even close to knowing what an alphabet was.
Yep.
And by the way, Muhammad Ali lectured at Harvard and couldn't even read and write. So go fuck yourself. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, come on. Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you believe that? All right. So I got something here.
Okay. While you're getting that, thank you everybody for being here in the comments. We've got some great comments in here. This will be pushed on Spotify here in a couple of days, but point being, I'm glad everybody's here. Thank you for the gift of your time. Thanks, Todd, for being here. So yeah, let's get into
this. So here's
fun.
Just one. I think I've written about 300 articles over the years about how this works, and I've probably made close to that many videos. Like, all right. Yeah. And I usually do the best I can to cite the actual research in there, but I want you guys to understand, I can do it. I have all the footnotes. I have all of it. Mm-hmm. I've got all the fucking receipts, okay? But you know what? You got to do your own fucking research too. IDS isn't here to be your research and development branch. You know what I'm saying? So I'll put it out there so that you can start to look some stuff up for yourself, but it's not my job to go through and cite every fucking thing I say. You can look for yourself, but I do the best I can to actually cite things when it's convenient for me to do it. All right. So contextualized decision making, the key to effective firearms training. This is an article, a short article I wrote a while back.
Yeah.
When it comes to firearms training, and you can replace it for firearms training with Filipino martial arts, just substitute it. When it comes to firearms training, it's crucial to understand that generic information processing is not the same as contextualized decision making integrated with relevant motor skills. Sure, calling out shapes, numbers, colors, targets, and running a competition stage can improve general attributes, but it fails to provide the necessary context to enrich self-organization within the specific context of violence. That's just the first paragraph. You could spend a lifetime on that paragraph, and I guarantee you that almost nobody has a clue what the fuck I'm talking about. That's part of the challenge, just goes right over their head, right? And so if you just took those keywords that I emphasized when I read it, that would lead you to where I'm talking about. All right, next paragraph. The reality is that learning to make decisions is encoded with specific movements, and they are baked into the cake together. So what I'm trying to get at is that your contextualized decision-making, which is real decision-making that you would be making in reality, needs to be coupled with the motor skills that you would be performing in reality and how relevant they are. Next, therefore, training that involves real human resistance integrated with decision-making that is specifically representative of how violence actually occurs is the most effective way to deepen and accelerates the student's learning. This ecologically dynamic training approach allows students to integrate all necessary components of their performance and develop real competence, especially the high probability of integrated combatives. So you can learn combatives and you can learn firearm skills, but are they integrated? If they're not integrated, if they're in silos, you know what I'm saying? Like you're working against yourself. And this is what we do. Okay. Next, in contrast, generic information processing is an information poor environment that denies students the opportunity to interact with relevant information. This approach takes the focus away from the learning process and fails to provide the students with the necessary skills to handle the nuances of violence. Fortunately, modern training tools offer cost-effective and convenient ways to integrate contextualized decision-making and relevant motor skills in the training in the firearms training environment. However, it's important to note that this ecologically dynamic approach to firearms training requires ongoing practice to develop real unconscious competence. Regular training multiple times a week is a biological necessity to reinforce the neural pathways necessary to execute precise and accurate movements in high stress situations.
Okay. I'm going to try to decipher for my own, but that's an excellent article, and I would love to get a copy of that because there's so much there. Okay. Be able to fight tonight. I'm going to use just general bullet point terms. Okay. Learn the fight tonight. Fight the fight that you need for this evening. Fighting within the dynamic of, say, sports, choreography, tradition. So that at least a base level.
Which I'm all for, by the way. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I'm all for that.
Yeah, that's development. You're learning in a sanitized environment where it's safe and you can learn the physical motor skills and understand concepts.
But if you're learning it for the sake of learning it, sort of like if you're learning to shoot for the sake of shooting, there's a big difference between being a shooter and being a defender.
Yep. Context matters. That's the other part. Then leading into this issue about siloing information. So I will go within the modality of training from the military. So combatives, like physical hand-to-hand combatives, was often the redheaded stepchild compared to our battle drills, our fire tasking, learning how to shoot online, tactics, all the things involving guns, all the things involving integrated systems and force multipliers on the field, such as communicating with artillery, aircraft, et cetera, et cetera. And then the very tail end was, oh yeah, we're going to learn some hand-to-hand combatives. When the fact is, when you're breaching through the door, that is most relevant. So there's that part where they siloed the information, and
none of it's ecological. None of it's ecological because they're not having an authentic and relevant interaction with a contextualized environment.
Yeah, and the further end of that is
the decontextualized linear information processing.
Yes, and then the other part about where a lot of people don't get to, because my own experiences as a trainer in the military, is the fact that the development at the speed of war, especially at the tactical level, at a line infantry level, we'll say, where they don't have the development groups such as, like, again, Dev Group with SEAL Team 6 there on the East Coast, they don't have the opportunity to develop with the best speeds, modalities, tactics, techniques, where they're actually utilizing it at the speed of war. It's the trickle down effect for the common. And the problem you run into is that the common makes up the majority.
Well, I can, if I can just jump off on that. I understand. And I'm not in disagreement with it, by the way. Yeah. One, I can sort of get why they take this standardized approach, because everything in the military is an SOP. Mm-hmm. And you have a large number of people that you need to kind of shove through. Yep. That you need to shove through training, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying is, like, for us anyway, like, we're the farthest from standardization. We want our process and our program to fit you. Mm-hmm. Your attributes, your circumstances, your lifestyle, right? And
we have the opportunity.
Because we have the opportunity, it's unique to you. And mm-hmm. So I in a way I can kind of get and understand why and empathize with why they do things the way that they do it. The mm-hmm. problem is that people come from a military background and they think, well, I learned it this way. Here was the methodology and here mm-hmm. was the context. So mm-hmm. now I'm just going to superimpose that same methodology and context onto these people. And so now that becomes the firearms training paradigm.
Yep. And that's what I was going back to in our earlier point in the podcast about the patrilineal tribal learning structure of a single data point of handed down from the guy above me and passing it on to the guy below me, because this is the only thing I've ever done. So it's a limited source of information. So learning how to fight for your body
and I don't care. And I don't care. I'm interested in evidence over eminence, and I'm not in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not a part of that, and I'm not interested in being a part of that. Like, I don't give a fuck what your rank was in the military. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I give a fuck about what the research says. And that has nothing to do with you. And you probably don't even know what the fucking research says. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't even do what we do. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, the way that you prioritize your training is very different than the way we have to prioritize our training, because while there's a little bit of overlap in that Venn diagram, stop conflating the two. Mm-hmm. Stop conflating the two, because what your context deals with and what my context deals with is not the same thing. So I know it's convenient for you to sell. Mm-hmm. And now that I'll add this, right? It is greatly discouraged in that environment to have any level of originality.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if you're not following along with the status quo and what the protocol is, well, then you're a problem, right?
Well, it's a slave to the curriculum. It's the whole slave to a curriculum issue.
Yeah, fuck that. What are you talking about? Why the fuck would I do that? Well, you're being disrespectful. Why? Why am I being disrespectful? I'm being disrespectful for telling the truth because I'm not worshiping someone that you've appointed as this, this sacred cow. Like, for me, like that, they make the best burgers. Like, doesn't mean shit to me. And all of that, like, why would it mean shit to anyone? Mm-hmm. I'm not taking away from what they do. I love, admire, respect, and care deeply. I'm a patriot. I've risked my life for my country in other ways. Okay, mm-hmm. Just want you to know that. Okay, January 6th. Just want you to know that. I'm just saying, like, stop being full of shit. Stop with the bullshit. And not only that, dude, I have trained SWAT teams, dude. That means jack fucking squat, dude. I have met SWAT teams. I'm like, I can't even believe that this is a SWAT team. Like, I can't, how, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know you want to throw that out there in the public, like that's some kind of a super big deal. But if you knew the reality of that, like, you wouldn't throw that out there, man.
Well, it's the accolades of awesome by association and living vicariously through our students And it's the opposite effect of where a student feels awesome because this is my pedigree, and then you have the instructor saying I'm awesome because these are my students, and
perceived value or perceived authority, and that somehow that's rubbing off on you, some kind of magic secret sauce that's rubbing off on you, and somehow you're awesomer because of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and talk about training contextualization, because again, this is the issue about modalities of training from the military, because military experiences very rarely overlap to civilian context, because the fact is, one, I don't have a fire team, two, I don't have a squad with three, I don't have the toys and the tools.
They're apples and oranges, man.
Tactical cosplay.
They're both fruit. They're both fruit.
So you got tactical cosplay versus personal protection for my family. I'm not defending, and the middle ground people say is I'm doing the executive protection of a principal, but I still don't have the issue there is I don't have the support for it. It's me and my family versus I got a team or I got a whole infrastructure of military support.
Context dictates strategy, and it's also true of marksmanship and competition shooting too, right? Those contexts are not the same. Then competition shooting couldn't be farther from self-defense. You can try to conflate that all you want, but it could. And the problem is, like the top two leagues of I don't know if they're called league, and competition shooting is like IDPA, right? International Defensive Pistol Association, right? There's nothing defensive about it. Internet, right? Or IPSEC, like it's called the practical shooting, right? Like there's nothing practical about that if you understand how violence actually occurs. It's a predictable environment, right? Not only that, the probability for a citizen defender to be in gun-on-gun combat in a volley at distance is almost non-existent when you remove the statistics of gang warfare and drug crimes,
criminality. We remove criminality from the situation.
But specifically those.
Yes.
If you specifically remove those, the chances of you being in a gunfight is infinitesimally small. Like it's right. I'm not saying we shouldn't be prepared for that. We're actually very good at it. We're not here. We shouldn't prioritize marksmanship. It's about 10% of our practice that we do every fucking day. So you can get really good at marksmanship, right? But is your marksmanship contextualized or decontextualized? But not only that, like, is it integrated with all the other modalities that I showed earlier from my Venn diagram? Here, it's right here. Like these are very, very, very different things that no one wants to acknowledge, because they want to train people based on the skills that they don't fucking have. And the skills that they don't have, not only in terms of the skills that they can actually apply, but the skills that they have in teaching it. Right. Look, it gets crazy, man. Like I saw a guy who was Delta Force who put up a really popular video of him featured in it talking about striking.
Okay.
Like, dude, like I'm surrounded by some of the best strikers on planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I learned from some of the best strikers who literally have ever lived. And I'm watching people worship this guy talk about striking. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yep.
What? Aren't you embarrassed, dude? Aren't you embarrassed? Like, I do it, man. And like, I grapple sport grappling. You have never seen me put out a video on submission grappling, have you?
No.
Why? Because I'll bring in someone else who does that shit. It's a different context.
That's why I don't do firearm stuff. That's why by policy, I don't put out firearms related material. Doesn't mean I train it, but I'm not personally, I don't believe I'm qualified enough to put out saying with my own good conscience that come to me about firearms. No, that's not my lane.
Yeah, man. And we got to stay in our lane. Right? And then we have the firearms people who now it's cool to like add some combatives, and I'm watching and I'm just going, my God, dude, like what is happening here? What?
Yeah.
It's just it's a mess. I want no part of it, man. I want no part of it. I think I got away from your question.
I forget what the question was.
We were talking about contextualization, right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
So contextualized decision making versus generic information processing. Just to give you an example of the two. Generic information processing, like the firearms training world thinks this is really amazing training, right? Where it's call target, shoot, no shoot. And like, oh, it's a flashing red light, it's a no shoot. It's a flashing green light, it's a shoot. If it's a triangle, it's a shoot. If they call out this target, you shoot that target. That's generic information processing. It's completely decontextualized. It has nothing to do with what decisions you would actually be, what types of contextual decisions that you actually have to be performing in fractions of a second, where you need to self-organize and coordinate yourself with that stimuli, or with that contextualized stimuli in real time.
So that's your X pattern. So for FMA, that's your X pattern, male, female triangle. That's what that is, by the way.
With real, that's generic information processing. That's not contextualized decision making, which is happening so fast in fractions of a second that it's literally it's imperceivable. There's a time and a place to do those things, I think, to help refine mechanics and refine attributes. There's a time and a place, like we can't do ecological training with a live weapon, so we use inert weapons, and we don't have tons of people so that everything is ecological with real resistance with live human people all the time. And we do a lot of UTM work, but that's not efficient either. It's expensive, requires a lot of training or safety protocols and equipment. Like, we can do so much more with inert tools, right? And so we go 95% with inert training tools like the CERT, 2.5% with non-lethal training munitions like UTM, and 2.5% with live fire. And then we're looking at what things can we use to transfer over as much as we possibly can, and prioritize our live fire for what are the skills that we need the most with live fire that are it's called representative task design. For those who are watching at home, that's what I'm talking about. Are the tasks that you're performing actually representative of what you would actually be doing in reality? That's what it means. So our live fire training doesn't look like other live fire training. If you guys ever watched our guys, like, it's super dynamic, and we've got elevated heart rates with moving targets. Like, there's a lot more to it. It isn't like, doing a box drill where we're walking in a square while we shoot in straight lines. Like, no, man, like, no, that's working against you. I know the big names do it and you think it's cool and it's fancy. It's not, it's stupid. If you knew how motor learning worked, you would go, that's the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. Why am I wasting my time? I'm creating training scars and slips and capture errors. And why am I carrying a battle belt? Why? Because Tim Kennedy sells a battle belt and he wears one because he wore one in Theater of Law, or Theater of War, maybe, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, these things work against you. They create slip and capture errors and training scars. More than just, are they not applicable and not relevant? They literally create training scars.
Tactical cosplay versus personal protection as a civilian. I will keep coming back to that. That'll be the hill I die on. But the fact is, in this space, that is what I'm constantly seeing, especially as a veteran, is tactical cosplay versus personal protection as a civilian who doesn't do this as a profession of arms any longer. And it's the same with the self-defense edged weapons community.
For sure. Right. Okay. So here's an abbreviated list of some of the core things that have to be present to maximize the transference of skill. Okay. Has fidelity and is dynamic. Is functional, relevant, and principle based. I would rather teach you to be a key maker than give you a collection of keys.
Correct.
Right? You have to be able to solve that problem yourself because the variables aren't repeatable.
Correct.
Okay. Should look like what you would actually be performing. Is alive, random, and unrepeatable. So you've seen me put out videos about this. Like, it's called repetition without repetition.
Yep.
So you're getting a ton of volume and repetition, but no two repetitions are the same.
Yep.
Right? We put the problem first. I don't do a demo first. I put the problem first. I let them struggle with the problem, and then I help them guide their way through it. And if they're really struggling with it, I'll give them some starting points. I'm not saying I never do demos. I do demos, but right, it's not, those things aren't necessarily going to fit for everyone. And so then I will talk about what the pros and cons are to the options that I'm presenting for them. Right?
So ask a question, figure it out. Ask a question, figure it out.
Put the problem first, but like they're doing it for real. Like they're experiencing real aliveness and real resistance. That's highly probabilistic, right?
Yep.
The perceptions that you're having are dictating your movements, and then your movements are dictating the next perception, and so on and so forth. You're constantly going through an OODA loop. Okay. It's constraint based or constraint led, and it's scalable. Okay, so it doesn't have to be everything all at once with the highest level of intensity. We can scale this to the skill of whoever the student is, or whatever's happening at the time, or injuries they're dealing with, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the big one. Skill development and skill application is happening simultaneously.
Yes.
The outdated paradigm, they say skill development happens first, and then you learn to apply the skill. The research doesn't support that at all. The research is of 80 years, by the way, 80 years of hard research, like a huge, massive body of evidence. Real scientific evidence says, no, if you want to maximize the transference of skill, the skill development and skill application are happening simultaneously. They're happening together.
Yes. It's the whole, you learn by the fight, you learn in the fight. And it goes back to, I forget the study, but it has to do with Russian blacksmiths. It's the end result that matters. It's not the path of which they were trying to get there.
And by the way, there's a huge level of variability when they're swinging that hammer. They did a bunch of research on this. They're not swinging the hammer the same way every time. There's variability based on what's happening in their environment, and that's a predictable environment. And there's still a high level of variability.
Yep. And this is where I like the approach of, what is the principle that I'm trying to use as a rule set to keep it in reality, because we're in a reality-based situation, because we can't break physics yet. So there's things that are predictable. And then what is the problem? Better yet, what is the question of the day that I'm trying to figure out? And then how do I apply it to the body type and circumstance of who I'm working with, how I'm feeling that day? And just accept that it's messy.
You're not even the same. Yeah, it's messy. You're not even the same person at the end of the day that you are at the beginning of the day. And everyone wants to be aesthetically pleasing. They want to look good in practice. Whereas the reality that the best performers are training the ugliest. It's ugly. There's a ton of failure that's happening and a lot of mistakes that are happening. But they end up performing the best when they need to. Training ugly is what it's all about. But we're in an industry where everything needs to look good, and it has to be aesthetically pleasing, and it has to look good on camera. I can name people for you right now who are watching this, who worship people in your community, where they put out a bunch of highly produced videos where they look everything looks perfect all the time. Everything looks beautiful, and they can pull it off, boy, I'm telling you. And you've never fucking seen them do a live go once. I'll bet you anything they got a live button on their phone, and all they got to do is pull up their social media and push live. I do it all the fucking time.
Yeah, you do.
Right? So I'm saying, like, why do you follow these people? Why do you want to learn from them? Do you really think that's how they're gonna look? When shit's going sideways, what they've done is created an unrealistic expectation of human performance under stress and compressed time when the stakes are life and death. That's what they've done. They've done the world, they've done you, and they've done your community a disservice. And by the way, it's complete with sound effects. Listen, I worked in the movie business. I was a writer, director, producer, right? I know cinematic language. I know influencing techniques. I know propaganda techniques. I know manipulation techniques. I know all of that. And I know martial arts, and I know combatives. It's bullshit. It's the Wizard of Oz, man. It's Oz behind the fucking camera, and behind the curtain, and I am fucking Toto.
Yep, and it's so what it comes down to, and this is the rules that I live by with social media. If I am to post something, post with purpose is the big one. But the fact is it entertainment, is it education, or is it inspiration? Typically, for the base consumer, they don't want to invest the time to be inspired or to be educated. They want to be entertained. And this is where, again, the personalities and the personas are out there. I mean, I'm a bit of a personality and persona myself. I mean, that's part of the reason why I got this little fucker, because I find it funny and people find it funny. But yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
it's fun. I love the rubber chicken.
Yeah, me too. But I'm not doing this for a living. And that's the thing. I'm not a character for a living. That is authentically me. If you talk to anybody who've known me for over 10 years, it has always been a thing with me. So, and on top of all that, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to make a living. And this is where I find the personas and the personalities. It's about making a living.
I don't care if, like, my point is, like, why don't you just call those people a sellout? Why don't you just call them out? Why don't you just call them out?
You're talking about me personally?
They're a social media entrepreneur, but none of that. It isn't just social media. They do the same thing in person.
Yeah.
They do the same thing at the seminars that they teach. Everything looks perfect. It's all pre-choreographed. It's like trying to say that figure skating is hockey, man.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I want to borrow that.
It's pre-choreographed. It's beautiful. It looks great, man. Figure skaters are gorgeous, man. They're like, I love figure skating. I love watching it. It's a really cool thing, right? They're on ice, they're on skates, they're in the same arena, right? The whole thing, right? That's why we say generic marksmanship is to figure skating as fighting with a gun is to hockey. And our motto is don't be a gunfighter, be a fighter with a gun.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what they are. They're figure skaters who have convinced you that they play hockey.
Yeah. I like that.
And that's a lie. That's a lie. If it was in any other industry, they could be sued for fraud. It's a lie. They're lying to you.
And this is where pre-verbal qualifiers and professional integrity is absolutely necessary. And on top of all that, for the base consumer, they'd have to have the critical thinking skills and capability and the self-awareness of this dopamine effect is, am I being entertained, educated, or inspired?
Yeah, and the algorithms favor entertainment.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
I mean, literally, like, you can look this up. Like, this isn't just Todd, like, Todd's mad, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, like, really, you know? Oh, bro, like, when is the madness gonna stop?
I don't think it will, honestly, because the fact is, if at scale, a lot of people just don't care because they don't want to be faced with the messy truth or reality of what comes from the responsibility of violence. I'm going to refer to a video that's become very popular here recently because it shows and demonstrates the reality of knife on knife combat. It is that video from the Ukraine conflict of the Ukrainian and the Russian soldiers engaging in lethal contact with edged weapons, and it's heartbreaking. And what it is, you're seeing them figure the shit out whilst killing each other. And I can't imagine any sort of, like, how many X drills they were doing, how much Panatukan, Huba Luba drills they were doing prior to getting into the mix. They were taught, here's a rifle, point forward, you might have a team. But when it comes down to it, they didn't have the skills or the years to develop the skills with an edged weapon. And we saw the catastrophic response of there was no pretty movement. Dude was literally biting the fingers off the other guy. I mean, it is not pretty. And yet the industry doesn't take responsibility of this is actually what occurs. Now, there's fine for teaching culture. Sure, I teach a cultural approach to Filipino martial arts because I'm Filipino. Sure, but I don't say that in the context of this is what real violence looks like. This is a cultural system. But in the responsibility of, like, you want to talk about warfare and context, like, that's also not my lane. But I'm willing to explore and express, like, here's an edged weapon. Here's the context of I'm going to go hands-on, and in so doing, there is going to be a grapple fight, and I'm probably going to lose, and so are you. And people don't want to see that because the delusion and the entertainment value, plus it's about the income of what bringing in students and marketing and whatnot for their skills, when the fact is, when you actually see it in reality, is it's so fucking messy and humbling of how messy it is. Again, the whole prison systems of grab a dude and stab him to death, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You don't need to sell that. People just know that inherently. But it's the lack of accountability of saying, hey, this is reality. We say like it's reality, but the reality is this stuff is pretty straightforward. but we want to
or they'll
sensationalize.
make the exception the rule because someone got it, because someone did it once.
Yeah.
That, from time to time, someone has been successful, and so therefore they sell the exception as the rule.
Yeah.
Right?
So exception as a rule. I've been stabbed a few times because of my previous life as a stupid teenager doing hood rat shit in Los Angeles. Okay. That is where the base of a lot of my real world experience comes from. In my teens, it's been 20 years. So the space and time and development from that context and situation, again, I'm very different than who I was at 18 versus 40. I can't be the same because that's like a progress. But when it comes to like a straight up, I won a knife engagement, the factors behind that is drunk guy in the barracks. He came to my door and he pulled out a bullshit knife, and I was able to parry and push his ass out the door and smash him against the wall. And there we go. That was a perfect self-defense, knife defense executed. Did I develop a system? No, because it doesn't work that way.
I think Kevin and Goat and I did a 2-hour show just on this.
Yeah.
So people can go check that out. We get fairly detailed. Like, I've been stabbed twice myself. I was bouncing when I was stabbed twice, so it's not like I've seen other people stabbed, several times doing that and bouncing in pretty dangerous places. I think it really that video is very. It's very sobering, right? But it really illustrates the point in all of self-defense, martial arts, and firearms training on the difference between reality and training.
Yeah. Oh, like the other aspect. So when I was a teenager at a football game, I got stabbed in the chest with a box cutter. Like, Mexican kid came up and just like hammered this thing into my chest, broke it off, and just went on. How could I defend against that? Situational awareness, sure, that's a buzzword. But when you got a couple hundred people in a crowded space, how can I have all my feelers aware, especially at 17, 18 years old, where my brain isn't fully developed, I don't have the skill. So
that's a super common attack with the edge weapon. Overwhelmingly, the weapon is hidden, and the intent is hidden until the last possible moment.
And that's reality of how you're going to use it. So
yeah. And the speed of the attack scientifically is 0.14 seconds.
Yeah. So how do you develop a system?
You don't. You have reflexes. You have precognitive reflexes that you can develop that can increase your probability of survival, but that you don't. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I feel, and this is the attempt for those, because I was there as well, trying to sell a product as an instructor, because I made my living as a martial arts instructor and teaching combatives. It's like we try to do the best that we can, but there comes a point of how far are we living our own bullshit versus like, here's the responsibility within the context of who are we teaching. Because trying to teach the heavy jiu-jitsu led edged weapon combative stuff to a 60-year-old grandma, that's contextually inappropriate. She's never going to learn those skills. Never, ever going to be capable of it. Maybe 20 years ago, sure. But this is the fault of like the empowerment seminar approaches. They will tell her that you've done this grappling class for 4 hours today. They did high fives, they did a group photo. You're now empowered. You can take on that D1 wrestler and you're good to go. Or you're a 60-year-old man who is not in shape. Yeah, may teach for a living, but it's not actually in the mix with the guys engaging in heavy contact with that environment with the intent to do harm, such as the shared suffering of getting on the mat. And again, you think your tool is going to win against that D1 wrestler or that pack of kids who are going to ambush you on the subway. I mean, let's be real here. But they're a personality and they're going to sell it.
Yep. It all comes down to integrity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so do you have integrity? Are the people that you're learning from, do they have integrity? Listen, I'm all for martial arts if it's a pursuit for you, if it's a hobby, and it's the art of it is something that you love, and that's great, man. There's a lot of great stuff that can come out of that. Like really, really, people think I hate martial arts because I don't call myself a martial artist. I don't. First of all, I don't feel worthy of calling myself a martial artist because I haven't earned that title, and nothing that I do is traditional or ornamental.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm more of a combat athlete, if in that context, than a martial artist is, right?
Yeah.
But again, there's that intellectual honesty. There's that semantic accuracy.
Yep.
There's that there's a scientific literacy. There's the moral objectivism.
Mm-hmm.
There's the integrity. There's the integrity element of it.
Yep.
So I hope that anyone who's watching, I hope that you support those who fall into that category. That, you know, we are in this age where there is a renaissance period that's happening,
mm-hmm.
and it's really up to the consumer. It's up to the consumer to say enough is enough, right? It's sort of like, you know, I know a bunch of people who are watching this have stopped watching certain films that certain actors are in, right?
Yeah.
Good for you. Now
Yep.
stop following social media personalities or learning from instructors who are really just actors.
Yeah. Do you think, because I mean, we've had 20 years of war through the GWAT, and some will say it's forever war, which I'm of that opinion. Do you think at some point we're going to, the consumer base is going to eventually move away, relying on the awards, the laureates, and just this heavy credentialing from a war that occurred 20 years ago? Because, like, think about this, 20 years later, okay, the GWAT just ended, but 20 years from now, will people still subscribe to the authenticity, the integrity, the knowledge base of those who went through the GWAT? Will that still be relevant to the problems of the future? I know we're predicting the future, but do you think, because we've seen this in the past where we relied on Vietnam era level tactics, we learned and then we didn't have the development at the speed of war, and so we're dealing with outdated tactics, but we relied upon that from Vietnam, World War II, to say, hey, this is the way. Do you see that happening again? Or do you see us breaking away from that, especially with the way that information is now? Because the difference now compared to back then is we have the internet and so much videography to prove or to show, provide we know where to look, know what we're seeing, know how to read this, and not be hijacked by the endorphins, but actually critically analyzing the stuff and saying, oh, that's some bullshit, or oh, that's some real stuff. Do you think that paradigm can shift forward with enough time?
Yeah, I understand why there's so much confusion, because there's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
Right. And so people, and not only that, I'll tell you that a lot of people the people who do video analysis, right? They're cherry picking the videos, knowing which videos are going to get the most views, right? And they're cherry picking the videos based on what videos are going to push their own narrative and their own philosophies, right? And so, like, are people out there really doing a real scientific analysis? And not only that, I'll tell you, you know, I'm a force science analyst. I'm a certified force science analyst. Video doesn't tell the whole story at all. It comes close. Video tells a lot of lies, and it's very deceptive. You don't see what happened before the fact. There's a lot of things that you don't know about when you're watching a video. And not only that, there are a lot of violent crimes that particularly when it comes to aggravated assaults, that aren't caught on video at all.
Like the razor game. You walk up to somebody and you cut them and move on.
Yeah. And so the way to really look at it is like do an analysis, a meta-analysis of multiple data sets that tells you what violent crime looks like based on just the raw numbers, the raw data. How do those average out? What does that look like in general? Right. And then we can start to look at things, the nuances of it on video. But I think if we're solely looking at video, it's confusing, because you got the people out there that are full of shit that are putting out nothing but the perfect looking videos. Right. And then you got the fuckers that are out there cherry picking what videos that they're going to be talking about so they can feed the algorithm. Right. And do all that social media bullshit. And then you've got the real thing. So I get why people are so confused. Well, which one is real? Like, because there's so much confusion that's happening there. I think it's going to be up to podcasts like this, and it's going to be up to instructors who have integrity and who are willing to tell the truth, and who are the best at their human ability to tell the truth. And it's going to be up to the consumer and the students to go, no, I'm not going to go down this path anymore. And if I am, I'm going to be intellectually honest. And if that happens, I see that trend happening in general. I see a lot of pushback, and people are really gravitating toward authenticity, and people are really thirsty for the truth.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of how do the people who tell the truth actually get their message out in a truthful way, and how are people willing to receive the truth, or the closest thing to truth anyway, and are they going to view the truth as skepticism, but they'll receive the lie as a truth.
Yep. Because again, it's going back to the dynamic of actually putting in work in versus empowerment. And people, as much as they say they like to be humble, they don't like to be humbled. Again, a humbling factor. I've really dove back into jujitsu because I have the opportunity now. I have a great jujitsu instructor, Professor Jordan Contra, who I'm going to see here in about an hour. But I started my jujitsu journey started in my 20s when I first enlisted in the Army through the Modern Army Combatives program. I was an instructor in that, but that's not pure jujitsu. The context of that is different from sport. It's also different from mixed martial arts, which is also another background, versus the combative usage of grappling with a tool, such as like the stuff that I've done here a lot here recently is grappling with an edged weapon, because that I'm trying to fuse two different data sets of my experiences, and it's messy as fuck. It just is. You've seen it.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
it's fun, but it's humbling because like the aspect of going to jujitsu where it's humbling. I spent 20 years as a striker. I can't strike very well anymore, especially in Alaska wearing extra toughs on the ice. I'm not going to throw a roundhouse kick to somebody's head, let alone being able to do that because my body doesn't work as it used to. So and coming into jiu-jitsu in my 40s is rough because I'm dealing with these 18-year-old scary-ass wrestlers, and that's humbling. Now, a lot of people don't want to get on the mat to do that because it's hard. It's humbling. It hurts because I'm still hurting, and I will always be hurting. But the point being is the reality is people don't want to get out of that little silo and face a bit of suffering and sacrifice to that suffering to actually get some knowledge. And just the same with education. People don't want to challenge their preconceived notions and ideas and the prejudices and preferences to say, oh, I really didn't know what I thought I knew. Or, oh, the things I was taught is a bunch of bullshit and I fed into that. People don't want to face that structure, that adversity of self to actually find that peace and that enlightenment on the other side. It's just like going to therapy. People don't want to go to therapy because it's hard.
It's hard.
But you got to. Because in the end state, it's a beautiful thing.
It's hard. Yeah. The metric for competence per one skill, like in terms of the neuropsychology, the metric is per skill, a single skill, is 20 minutes of practice a day for 12 consecutive weeks per skill. Right. And so in order to maintain that level of competence and to go beyond just unconscious competence, but into the level of mastery, it's a biological requirement that there's first of all, failure is a biological requirement for myelination to occur. So for those long-term neurokinetic pathways to form, it requires consistent failure and ongoing. And again, I work with world-class fighters. Okay, I mean the best, the top, and they fail the most.
Thug Rose. I love watching her.
Yeah, Thug Rose, right? And others too. And they fail the most, and they're the most teachable, and they understand this, and they rush to failure. What can I do? How can I get in and fail the most? And think about it, like they're a top tier person and they have fame and, all that kind of stuff. And they're finding ways that they can be tapped out in public. They get tapped out in class, or they're finding ways that they can fail. And not only that, you think about Rose, just think about her public willingness to be vulnerable, just with struggles with life and the human condition and all of that, right? And you see other people doing it now too, Sean Strickland and other people, that they realize that their strength and vulnerability and that they have a growth mindset, and the growth mindset requires that training ugly, that failure, that fall on your face, that get up and do it again, and stick your neck out and all of those things. That's why I have so little disrespect for people who put out all this pre-choreographed garbage.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want me to respect you? Why? Because you're a narcissist and you automatically think that I should put you on a pedestal? And what? I don't respect you. Your respect is earned. You've done nothing to earn my respect.
Yep.
Nothing. You've done the opposite of it. You have crafted a persona for yourself, and you've put yourself at the head of an organization, and it makes you look really good. Or you're a clown jester. You're a jester in the court, and you like to make people laugh and entertain people with all of your stuff. And now you want to become an instructor. Now you want the respect, and you want the court jester to go into war, and people follow him into war, and that's a big problem. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And this is why part of why IDS was created, because now we have instructors all over the world, and we have students that are learning the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they have real competence. And so I think that's how we win.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how the truth wins.
Yep. Because again, I'm going to use a religious metaphor, even though I'm not a religious individual, so to speak, but relying on the testimony of your forefathers and not having found that for your own, you're just perpetuating the same dogma and rhetoric that has enslaved you to a philosophy and belief system. You got to go test it for
80% of human beings. This is a fact. Look it up. 80% of human beings make their decisions solely based on consensus.
Yes.
So the point is, we have to reach a tipping point where the consensus moves toward truth.
Yes.
Because if we don't reach a tipping point, that 80% isn't going to make their decisions. They're not going to make good decisions, right? So we have to reach a point where there's a tipping point where the masses are moving toward truth. Because that 80% is they just don't even, and it's also a fact that fewer than 10% of human beings ever think critically.
Yeah.
And a smaller percentage of them even pursue the answers to the questions that they have. Then even smaller percentage of them actually do the things that do something about the answers that they find.
Because it requires work. It is too easy just to be entertained. It is very hard to be educated. It requires time. Yeah.
Too bad. I'm not going to entertain.
I agree with you. Just so we're clear for my audience. I agree with you.
I know. I'm just saying too bad. And I'm not going to say things like, I'm not here to entertain you and then entertain you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit, because this is a Filipino martial arts podcast. Thereby, edged weapons are a big part of the conversation.
Okay.
Because the same rules apply because of firearms. I'm going to have 2 points. One, local laws and cultural norms dictating your moral belief system and thereby judging others by that, such as I'm in a certain state where their use of force is very limited. My ability to carry things to defend myself and protect those whom I love and my property is very limited. And I often would be, if I use those things to do those things, I will be subject to the law from the criminal, because I used it against them while they're engaging in violent criminal activity towards me. But I view others who train these things as bad. What's your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's a lot, man. That's a lot to unpack.
Okay, well, just simple. Like the rapid knife draw. I call it a DCKD. Sounds like dick because it kind of is, but it's the dynamic covert knife draw. It's a popular thing, but it's not a new thing. It's always been there. And that carries over from the firearms industry because that's where it came from. We'll just put it that way.
Well, speed. The value on speed is a myth, because the best performers are operating at a speed that's optimal to their circumstances.
Yeah,
you can go fast.
You
can go faster than your decision making, and I can write a book on that. Okay, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing, man. Okay, let me give you just some examples off the top of my head.
Okay.
State of Minnesota, where I live, in almost all jurisdictions and municipalities, it's not legal to carry a fixed blade.
Okay.
Okay, so when you look at how most violent crimes, especially when you're talking about aggravated assaults, how they actually occur, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I don't know if you saw this, but this is fairly recent, about the last 9 months or so in Minnesota, a law was passed where you can't even wield a lethal force multiplier if you have a reasonable means of retreat.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a case that happened here where there was a dude on a subway, or not subway, it's the light rail, it's a train.
Yep.
where there were three suspects who were harassing and being essentially violent toward a person on the train.
Mm-hmm.
And the person on the train got off the train and went to an overhang.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the aggressors wielded a knife and were threatening him with a knife, and he had a machete in his pants.
Okay.
He pulled out a machete in his pants and he held them off as a deterrent for 1 minute, and they backed away. And when they backed away, and when they left the view of the camera, he held the machete up for a longer period of time.
Yep.
And then two of them came back, and one of them was armed with a knife and one of them was not.
Mm-hmm.
He never used the machete at all. He just used it as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
He was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And he got 9 years because they determined that he had a reasonable means of retreat.
Oh, man, that's such bullshit.
His sentence was greater than the aggressors.
That's such bullshit.
Okay, so we want to talk about the reality. We want to talk about the realities of violence and the realities of a fixed blade.
Mm-hmm.
The guy had a fucking machete, and he didn't even use it. And he's in prison right now for 8 more years. You know, like it, and part of his sentencing, or part of the criminality, is because he had a fixed blade of any length.
Yeah.
You can't have a 1-inch fixed blade and carry it in Minnesota.
No.
In most jurisdictions.
So with that in mind, that's local laws, but viewing that as a morality viewpoint for others who train that in other jurisdictions where it's perfectly legal, like Alaska and Texas, you can basically carry whatever you want. And the laws for self-defense are far more liberal than others. But having as a moral judgment of those who train that in those areas and engage in those areas as bad, what's your viewpoints on that? Because there was a recent incident where that occurred, where somebody viewed another person like their training modality is bad because they're cosplaying and it's illegal in their area.
It's so, I'm a moral objectivist, man. It's like saying an inanimate object is dangerous. Like it's completely, it's like, I'm a moral objectivist, and that's something that's morally subjective, and it's completely absurd.
Yeah.
So I don't even entertain the absurdity. It's like when people, like, I've spoken at Second Amendment rallies. I spoke at the only Second Amendment rally at the U.S. Capitol. Okay, I gave a speech there. So I'm a strong Second Amendment advocate. Okay, but when people want to have conversations with me about the Second Amendment, I'm like, there's no debate. There's no Second Amendment. Like, I'm not going to entertain. Like, this is my God-given inalienable right? And it's the Second Amendment. I'm not even going to entertain any retardation. Like, I'm just not doing it. So, like, it's like, I'm not even going to discuss it. Like, you're ridiculous. I'm not playing that game.
Yep.
If you think they're bad, for what? They've done nothing wrong. What do you mean?
And that ties back to, again, personalities and personas on social media. That's where that occurs. And thereby what that does is inform those and guide them toward a sheeple approach to following that line of thought, and yet they will not objectively engage in the truth relevant to their circumstance, such as...
That was a social media thing too?
Oh, yeah.
Someone wanted views, right? Controversy sells. Yeah, so fuck them. That's where I'm at, man. Like, I've totally gone rogue, Kurt. Like, I've gone rogue. I'm off the reservation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not dancing on the crazy dance floor.
Dude, and that's why I appreciate you. Because, again, we all need that objective asshole. And I give that title to you lovingly. Because the fact of the matter is, I know what you're telling me is straight up from the heart. And again, true friends tell you when you fuck up, but they also tell you in the process, telling you when you fucked up, like, hey man, here's the standard. Let's raise you back up to it. Again, it's that we are who we associate ourselves with. It's not sycophants. It's true brotherhood is through suffering and shared collective moral basis. So when you have a brother, a friend who says, like, dude, you fucked up. That's not who we are. Let's get you back to compliance, instead of ostracizing you for long periods of time, cut you out of the tribe, saying, yeah, you fucked up. Let's fix this. We got you. We discipline you because we love you.
Yeah.
And
that brings up another topic too. Well, I prefer to think of myself as a disruptive innovator.
Yeah.
Right. But playing to the lowest common denominator. Why do you want to teach to the lowest common denominator? Because that's where the masses are at.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's what's easiest for everybody. Really? You want to teach life and death at the lowest common denominator? Really?
Yeah.
I don't. I want to teach to the highest common denominator. Why would you want to play that game?
Yeah.
Why would you want to learn from someone who plays who teaches or to the lowest common denominator? That's absurd. No, not doing it. And if that's what you want, then go somewhere else.
And that's the whole, and
they'll give you what you want.
And part of the justification comes from that is like, oh, they're just beginning. But sure, but if you're tailoring towards people who already do this, they're not doing this from the beginning.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because you can be a beginner and you can be taught to the highest common denominator. Doesn't matter.
Oh, I agree.
Level.
And this is the problem. And this is part of the educational structure that has been, say, like the military and law enforcement is they start you from the very bottom, assuming you know nothing, and break it down from, again, the building blocks of let's teach you the alphabet and then try to create full-on sentences versus we're going to give you the concept. Here we go. Figure it out. And that has been the training modality forever in a standardized structure.
And teach to the test.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's then create this kabuki theater because you've taught to the test and everyone has this pre-choreographed bullshit down and they think, right? That's the thing. Like if you're teaching to the test, you're not teaching people how to problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about. You're using your motor skills to solve problems. In the world of motor learning, it's called movement solutions.
Yeah.
So they're literally they're applying movement solutions to solve the problem. And if they can't, then they have no fight IQ. That's why the name of our conference is Fight IQ for CCW Conference. We're teaching you actual fight IQ while you carry a firearm, no matter what distance or circumstances that you're in.
Yep.
Fight IQ, fight IQ, fight IQ. If you don't have adaptable principles to solve the problem for you, so I say you're trained or you're untrained. You either know how to do it or you don't.
Yep.
It's that simple.
And that's why, again, the people that I find who are actually most open to learning a variety of skills that are humbled, I find to be fighters in a lot of ways. Guys and gals who've been in the ring, not soldiers, because soldiers are structured based upon military conditioning, but fighters who've gone through that process of been there, done that, and they know how to learn because they have the physical capability and adaptability to address variety of problem sets when it comes to martial movements. Now, the hard part I find with fighters is putting into the context of sport versus violence. That's the tricky part. But when it comes to the physical skill sets and ability, fighters learn how to fight really well. But
and they're far more open to these ideas than firearms people are, because they're used to the real resistance and what the consequences are. All the time, right? Martial artists in general are far more open to what we do than firearms people are, because firearms people think that the firearm is the solution to all the problems in the world.
Yep. I mean, same can be said within martial arts of like, my martial art is the solution to all the problems in the world, whether it's FMA, BJJ, Taekwondo, Aikido, whatever you want to say.
It's an interesting topic, and it'll be one that I'd love to explore with you in the future. My coach, my mentor of the last 10 years is Greg Nelson, someone who I spend several hours with every week, who's at the highest levels of disciplines I've never even heard of. I mean, everyone knows his MMA pedigree, right? Like 4 UFC world champions, blah, blah, all the world champion grapplers and kickboxers and et cetera on that part. But and FMA, but he's got the highest pedigree in every damn thing you can think of. And what's really great about him is like, he doesn't even view martial arts that he doesn't separate any of them. To him, they're just movements of the body, and he's always finding where are the common denominators between all of them.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Kelly does.
So there's no label on any of it, right? Then who cares what it's called or where it comes from? What's the movement?
Yeah,
not that he doesn't give credit where credit is due. He does. Yeah. That's another issue, by the way.
Yeah,
big one. Big one. right? But that's it, right? And that's where it's at. It's when you're looking at it from up here, what's the pattern? What's the pattern recognition, and how can I extract those patterns? It's like, and that's like when I first started learning from Greg, he would say, "Oh, you do Jeet Kune Do." I'm like, "I don't know Jeet Kune Do." He goes, "No, Jeet Kune Do is a philosophy. No way as a way." Right? Absorbing what is useful, rejecting what is useless, and making the rest of what is uniquely your own. Right? That's the whole idea. That's true adaptability.
Yep.
Yeah. Everything else is dogma.
He's very much in the same philosophy of why I really appreciate Dr. Kelly Warden, because he's of the same belief. I mean, it's the core of his instructional set it's all human movement. Get rid of the labels and titles and just figure the shit out.
Yeah.
And make the connections.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I think you're done talking, but
no, you're good, bro. You're good.
The delay is good. Sorry, the delay is messing me up. I'm really sorry about that. Kelly and I have never met, but we've had some interaction online, and everything I've ever seen from Kelly, I really respect and appreciate. I don't know enough about his disciplines to be qualified to have an opinion, but a game attracts game, right? And someone who has an objective and open mind, and he really seems to have that. So, hats off to him.
Yeah, I really am grateful that I have the availability to go learn from him, and by way of that through Belton, and just the cadre that he brings together is the same mindset of get rid of the ideological titles and just figure this shit out and accept that there's a lot of failure and it's messy, and let's just have an honest approach, and also let's learn how to learn so we can teach people how to learn how to teach. And it's the same things you've been talking today. Is the same stuff that Jeff Johnsgaard talks about. Is the scientific approach to learning and breaking from the dogma of what was before, because the dogma doesn't work clearly, but for some reason people like to perpetuate it because it's safe. So yeah.
And just to jump off on what you said, and this is just for me, when I say the scientific approach of learning, I'm talking about the scientific approach of motor learning.
Yes.
Because not cognitive learning and motor learning are not the same. Again, there's some overlap. There's a Venn diagram there. Same with the neural understanding of it, neuropsychology, the cognitive, right? The perception, cognition, the neuropsychology, and the ecological psychology. I think it's crucial that they're all baked in the cake. But we're specifically talking about motor learning because an intellectual understanding is not enough. A lot of people talk about things and think, well, we talked about that. Yeah, but did you train it?
Yeah.
And are you training it, and how often are you training it? Right. I hope I'm not be coming off as contrary to you.
No.
I know that's what you meant.
Yeah.
But just so the audience is clear, like motor learning is its own thing.
Again, it's for the audience, for others, it's the difference between theory and application, if we want to go down that simple terms. Because again, martial artists, there's a lot of theoreticists who think, but they don't do. Then you also have a lot of guys who do, but lack the education and intellect and overall codex to talk about the complexity of, and on an intellectual level, of what they're doing.
It's not intuitive. It's not intuitive. Like I wish I had saved all the emails over the years of people who would, or messages where people are like, well, this is what makes sense to me. I'm like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Forget about what makes sense to you and your intuition, and look at what decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of research actually shows. Forget about it. Your intuition is sloppy and inaccurate. It doesn't mean that you can't have an intuition with teaching, but as long as you're intuitive with how you apply what the science says, how learning actually happens, not how you think it makes happen, not what makes sense to you. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, well, you're already so far off track.
Yeah.
Well, I don't give a fuck what you think. I just don't care. I don't give a fuck what I think. And if I do, I'll tell you this is my opinion, but the research says this, right?
It is. There's not. It's the lack. What am I looking for here? Well, we try to understand the complexity of combat and the chaos therein. People try to rationalize it like 1 + 1 = 2, where they rely on the supposed repeatable things and try to put it in a box. But they're unwilling to accept that you can't put that in a box. We just try the best that we can within the scope of the reality of here's the principles of which we're trying to adhere to and for the goals that we're trying to achieve, by trying to establish a curriculum to say these 4 things will lead you to X no matter what. Again, those are lies. And it is a problem within the industry. In any industry, but more so with the real accountability of these are people's lives, and that's hard.
Well, one, even if there was such thing as a 2 + 2, it doesn't equal 4 in the world of violence.
No,
and not only that, there is no number 2, and there's no plus sign. Like and even if there were, you're not teaching people how to interpret or understand what those shapes mean.
Mm-hmm.
You're just for rote teaching them that this is 2. Don't worry about what it means. Don't worry about interpreting it. You're not teaching them how to do math. You're teaching them how to memorize math problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then now the problem but put before them, there's no right. In reality, if you really want to get geeky about it, it's a fractal. It's called it's a Mandelbrot set.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the mathematics of everything. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the small parts are in the big parts, and it's a holographic mathematical problem. Mm-hmm. And so that means you can really get geeky and say it is mathematical, but it's different. It's a completely different kind of math. Mm-hmm. And so if you think that if you don't even really know how to interpret mathematics, there's no way that you can do that super high level math. That's the problem. Like this is what math, the kind of math that you're talking about. You want 2 + 2 = 4, but this is what it actually looks like. It's chaos.
Yeah. And again, people try to rationalize it because they want to feel safe and they want to feel empowered. And the problem that with conversations like, I don't want to say the problem, for people who look at and hear conversations like this, for one viewpoint, they'll say like, this is impossible for me to achieve. Yes and no. Or it's yes, because if you don't put the work in, sure, it's impossible for you. But the fact is, we're still putting in the work in.
There's the problem again, right? It's not a line that you cross, it's a path that you take.
Yeah.
You're not going to arrive. And that's the problem with the whole belt system and rankings and the whole thing, right? Like, it's not a line that you cross. So if you just put that out of your mind, like the people who I know who are the most talented and the most trained in the world, they're every day is their first day and they feel like they don't know anything.
Well, you can fail beyond your control. I mean, this is why, again, I've used this phrase often, but it's still true. This is where Navy SEALs can die by kicking in the door and there's a kid with a dishka behind a fortified position, or they take an RPG to a chopper. And the fact is the most highly skilled and trained individuals can still die because chaos. Combat is chaos. And just the same, the most untrained little grandma can defend herself against a multitude of people because of tenacity and opportunity and skill. Or not skill, but tenacity and opportunity. There's no like real predictable patterns there. It's just shit occurs.
We're increasing our probability of success. That's all that we're doing. You do everything right and be a casualty. Do everything wrong, come out smelling like a rose. That's all that we're doing. We're in the business of the mitigation of probabilities.
Because I can be so highly trained. Again, the Navy SEAL who gets ran over by a truck. Because there's no way that they can engage that contact if that truck just happens to sideswipe them on the highway there in Los Angeles. There's no way.
And this is where the problem comes from. This goes all the way back to our early culture in the United States with, the gunslingers of the Wild West and dime magazines, and then silent films, right? And then Hollywood ran with it, and then television, and now video games, and then now social media. Mm-hmm. And so it's created this illusion of violence, and it's not reality.
No. It's not.
It's illusion. It's not reality. And those that are the best at social media are the best illusionists. It's a cognitive illusion. It doesn't mean there's no value.
Yeah.
It just means that they've created an illusion of their abilities that they don't actually have, and that's not going to translate well to you.
No, it isn't. And I guess for the sake of intellectual honesty for anybody who puts stuff out there is like, what are you actually putting out there? What is the purpose behind why you're putting out there? Is again, are you entertaining, educating, or empower or inspiring? And are you trying to sell a product? That's the one. And now I appreciate people who do this for a living because everybody's got to put bread on the table. They just have to take care of their family. I get it. But just like anywhere else, as you stated, any other industry where professional integrity is out the window, you get sued and go to jail.
You can do both, man. You can do both. Like that's like I don't care. Like for me, and I don't care if that's what you do for a living. No, like I don't care. Like you got to tell the truth. I'm not going to let you sensationalize shit.
No,
I don't care if that's what you do for a living. I'm a little bit different like that. Like when people say, "Well, I got to eat," I'm like, "No, you'll eat. You're not going to starve. Tell the fucking truth, man." You know, and like you can do both. Like imagine if the industry, people in the industry, everyone decided they want to have integrity. Like the leaders in the industry can actually dictate to their students and to their followers about what what reality is. It's just that they'll just are willing to compromise to benefit themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You can have both. I mean, look at Greg Nelson. Look at Eric Paulson, right? Look at these people. Like they have thriving businesses, and myself. Like, look, you can have thriving. That's who I want to be like. Other people like them. Like, you can have a thriving business and have integrity at the same time.
I should clarify: is you can be entertaining, but you don't. If you've crossed the line of being an entertainer trying to sell wares of truth, that is the problem, as we've stated throughout this podcast. But you can still be entertaining, have a thriving business. And again, this is the business that you're trying to sell and the product you're trying to sell. But again, as we've talked about, sensationalism for clicks, likes, and views is the problem here. And it puts people's lives in danger. That's the basic tone that I'm getting at.
I think Jordan Peterson is another example of intellectual honesty and commercial success.
Yep.
You know, and that's much harder to do. Like anyone can be a whore. Like anyone can be a clown and an entertainer, and anyone can put out sensationalized garbage. You know, it's like cotton candy, right? Keep consuming that. Watch what happens. Now you end up with rotten teeth and diabetes, right? And so I don't sell dopamine. You know, I sell sustained dopamine based on positive and functional resistance.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just not, you know, I don't have to tell you.
Yeah. And again, for the sake of my audience, this is why I appreciate having you on here to tell the difficult stories, actually to tell the difficult truths that you have figured out and you're willing to share, because that's the other one too, is knowledge is power, because people want to hold on to the knowledge that have dominion over others. And the fact that you're willing to share that of your time and free and opportunity, that's powerful. You want to talk about true empowerment? That is true empowerment.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man. If the truth can kill it, let it die.
Yeah. So we're coming up here in 2 hours, and I do have class here in about 45 minutes. Do you have anything that you want to put out for the audience? I mean, we talked about you have a calendar coming up for 2025. If you send that to me, I'll put it in the show notes and all that. But do you have anything like in the immediate you want to put out there for anyone to go look and find? Obviously, we'll find your social media. I'll put that up here real quick. Yeah,
I appreciate that, Kurt. Thank you. We have this really cool community on something called School. I don't know if the audience is familiar with School, SKOOL. It's like a social media platform, but it's for people who sell online training.
Oh, okay.
So we have an online training. It's cool because our community is a unique set of people. They take their training very seriously, and you can post in there yourself. We have 18 school.com/IDS is where that's at. SKOOL.com/IDS. And we have 18 full-length courses in there. We do online streaming content, like something we call pod classes, where we have we have subject matter experts on, and then everyone that's in the group can ask questions to the subject matter experts, and we do a lot of cool stuff in there. There's no noise. There's no noise like there's on social media. It's all signal.
Yeah.
And so there's that. People, I would be honored if people subscribe to that. There's a lot of value there. And
Here we go.
school.com/IDS.
Got it.
And then, if you click on, it should say classroom. See the classroom at the top. If you scroll to the top.
Discover community, discover create community.
Is there a button at the top that says classroom?
No, it says log. I think it's because I have to log in.
Oh yeah, you probably can't see it. And then we have another online streaming service called IDSCitizenDefender.com.
Okay.
Where people can subscribe and online there. And then we also have our affiliate program and our instructor certification program. And the best way really is to send me a message on social media. And you can check out our social media also, Integrative Defense Strategies, all over social media. And then Todd Fossey on social media. We're always putting out video and educational content all the time. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Let me put your website up here real quick. And hold on.
Yeah, that's the website for our local training, our lab works that I talked about, and also our instructor certification program.
Yeah. Here's the affiliates directory.
Yep.
No, that's just going to give you a Google map. But either way, people, go to the website here. You have the pedigree of people underneath you as an affiliate is quite impressive. Obviously, like our mutual friend Kevin Goat is another example. Mark Medieros and the guys from T4CT, Train for Trauma, that podcast, they're also affiliated with you, correct?
Joey, and also Joey Combat from Combat Arts out of Toronto.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're affiliates of ours. Yep.
Sweet.
We got a very unique group of people who really want to be a part of ushering in a new paradigm in training.
Yeah. Yep. At some point I'll make it down there. I promise you.
I can't wait. I can't wait to have you in the mix, Kurt. I appreciate all that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you sincerely. Thank you for having me on and being so supportive and letting me be who I am. But I hope that those watching know that I'm being who I am with the purpose of the greater good.
Yeah. Because again, you can't be anybody else but yourself. If not, you're a character. So I appreciate you being brutally honest.
I appreciate you too.
Yep. So I'm gonna drop you down real quick. I'll do our goodbyes for the episode, and I'll just hang out in the lobby real quick.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. All right, folks. 2 hours live. It's been a minute since I've done a podcast like this, but what a way to start the new year. I appreciate everybody for the gift of your time, and same for Todd Fossey for the gift of his time and willingness to share this stuff. And just the same way I talk about in therapy, because I inform basically everything that I do now from the lens of many years of therapy as to how I view the world and what I do. And Todd Fossey is one of those people who gives you brutal honesty. And he gives you the line of accountability of like, this is the line that you will meet to be present with him. Because the fact is, we blur this line just for association. Blur this line because we want to be part of a group. But the fact is, like, true people, they will hold you accountable. Your true brothers and sisters will say, this is the standard. When you fuck up, we're not going to ostracize you. It may occur, but when you fuck up, we're going to help fix that so you can come and be part of us. Because those who love you will tell you hard truths. Those who want the best for you will help you come to that point of where you're supposed to be for the betterment of everybody else. Again, don't catch yourself slipping, because your homies will tell you otherwise, and they will help you back to the path. And this is why I really appreciate Todd Fossey, because he's more than happy to tell you, you fucked up, but let's fix the shit. So anyways, 2 hours, great time. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon the rest of your time. Happy New Year. And I'm going to hit buttons. Anyways, bye everybody.